There's one thing you need to know before you start muscle activation techniques, and that's what we're going to talk with you about on this week's episode of the Exercises Health Podcast. We're going to cue our introduction and dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercises Health Podcast, brought to you by Muscle Activation Schaumburg. We're your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we're discussing something that we believe every single person needs to know before they start muscle activation techniques. Knowing this one thing is going to make your entire MAT experience way smoother and way easier. And so we want to share this with you because if you've considered doing MAT, or maybe you are in the starting point of doing MAT, or maybe you are full on into doing MAT, understanding this one thing will help everything from an experience standpoint, a results standpoint, and ultimately what you are able to accomplish and experience with your body through muscle activation techniques. And so we wanted to let you know that if you want to start taking action on what we're talking about today, that's exactly what we can help you with at our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, where we specialize in muscle activation techniques. So all you need to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to our website, www.matschaumburg.com, click the big green button that says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. All right, so a lot of times when people come in for muscle activation techniques and they've been referred by somebody else, and that's kind of one of the big caveats to this whole thing, is they've been referred by somebody else. There is an expectation, either spoken or unspoken, more times than not, that this is like a miracle, one-time and forever fixed kind of process. And that's really not the case with MAT. And why this happens so often when people get referred in is because typically the people who are most like evangelical about MAT are the people who like went in for one session and the stars aligned perfectly and it was just their day. And it was like everything they've been experiencing for the last quarter century just vanished after one MAT session. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I need to tell everybody. So they tell everybody. And they're like, it only took one session and now I'm like good forever. And that was 8 years ago and I've never needed anything since. It's like, okay, yeah, that happens every once in a while. But the truth of the matter is, when that happens, it's really mostly dumb luck that just happens, versus like, oh my, this is like the process that, you know, that you just need the one time and then everything is fixed and good forever. And so we want to talk with you about that today, because the more people can be aware that MAT is not actually like that, but it's like something else. Generally speaking, the smoother everything goes, and honestly, the better results, both short-term and long-term, people get.
That's right. I think that, managing expectations is the biggest thing about if people are feeling good with an experience or not. And yeah, when you get referred in by someone that had like that miracle experience, which again, I think every MAT practitioner has had that experience, or you make so much improvement relative to everything else someone else has tried in one session that it's like, wow, mind-blowing. But then if you come in for MAT because you hope that happens with you, then that's when you can be really easily let down. And the problem is that MAT probably can help you, most likely. But most cases, it's not that one and done experience. It's not that I went for 50 minutes and Charlie fixed my knee, that I've had looked at by all these other therapists, and, you have to try it because he did it in one session for me. He'll do it. We don't even, we're so against that because we know that people just don't find success with it in the long term, that we don't even offer that to people anymore. Like, that's not an option. You cannot come in one time. Unless it's like one time at the consult. But
exactly.
Charlie and I always debrief after our consults. It's like, oh, they were referred by someone that said it was going to be like one session and that's it. So we want to prepare you and just put in your mind what you should expect when you come in for MAT, because MAT, as powerful as it is, needs to be used appropriately, right? So that you can be getting the best results. And it's usually not the one and done magical experience for most people. So much so that we don't even recommend that you come in one time to see what we can get done in an hour, because we want you to be successful, and that is not the way to set people up for success.
Exactly. Now, if you're hearing this and you're like, oh gosh, like I really wish it was that way, we actually want to tell you how it can be that way, and how for a lot of people who follow what we're going to say at the beginning of this conversation, it does get that way for them, but it's just not that way right away. And so what do we mean? Well, here's the thing. With muscle activation techniques, we are fundamentally trying to change how your brain and your nervous system overall interact with your muscles, okay? That in improving that communication between your brain and your muscles. And so that requires your brain and your nervous system overall to kind of relearn how to access certain muscles. So we're looking for these neurological changes within your system. Now, neurological changes can happen very dramatically within a very short period of time. So that's like that kind of like miracle set one session where like everything changed, everything went away. But in order for your nervous system to really adopt those changes and for it to become like the primary way that your nervous system operates, it needs consistent, frequent exposure for about 6 weeks. Okay, and this isn't just like some number that, we pulled out of our back pocket. There's a lot of research backing this idea that your nervous system needs consistent, frequent exposure for about 6 weeks of time for it to really adapt changes long term. That's why when somebody gets an injury, let's say they roll their ankle, and they're compensating by walking with a limp and everything like that. If they can have intervention done upon their system, I mean, they can have somebody come work on their system within that first 6 weeks of the injury happening, the compensations are much, much shorter lived versus after it gets to that 6 week mark, because then their nervous system really has learned that the compensations are now kind of becoming their default, okay? And so that 6 weeks of consistent exposure, that's a really big thing, okay? And so if you can, in your mind, just come in with the expectation of like, okay, yeah, like for the first 6 weeks, there's going to be some consistent exposure and consistent effort on my part as far as like showing up on a regular basis, usually about once a week or so for those first 6 weeks. And that's going to be really the minimum that's going to be required in order to create that baseline where now all of a sudden your nervous system is starting to adopt the changes that we are trying to get it to, and then from there, then we actually have the opportunity to either like decrease the frequency or have you come in and be like, oh yeah, like this shoulder thing is going on and I don't know what happened. And then like after one session, it's like, okay, like completely good. So you need to build up that baseline first of kind of neuromuscular integrity, or like, raising the ability of your muscles to work. You need to build up that baseline first. And what we see is it's going to take about a minimum, for most people, a minimum of 6 weeks.
I love what you're saying here, Charlie, and to add to that, not only is it like building up for 6 weeks, but like what you were saying, like so many of us have compensations that we're either aware of or not aware of that we're like sifting through during these 6 weeks. And so a lot of this is like working through what we call like, oh, we're going to get your system up to par. In the meantime, most people experience an incredible improvement in their symptoms, like their physical aches and pains and the things that they're complaining about and feeling day to day. But after that time, that's when it becomes very, like you were saying, like, oh, this bothers me, great. An MAT, we'll just work on it, and then it goes away very quickly. I even had this experience this morning. Well, she's always talking about this, but I've worked with this woman for a handful of months now, and just this last workout, she did something and it tweaked like her, like the radial side, like the thumb side of her forearm. She's like, I don't know what's going on, and so then we worked on it, just very like, great, let me work on your hand and wrist then. She's like, I don't know, it's just amazing, totally gone. And I'm like, that's amazing. That would have never happened. Well, I wouldn't say never, but it's very unlikely that would have happened in the beginning, where it was very like, my wrist hurts, work on my wrist, and it gets changed or fixed or, great improvement right away, because we worked on her system so much. And actually, this client in particular, she's like, this is so amazing. I'm actually going to start coming more, because why should I wait a week when I have all this crap going on from years and years and years of buildup of symptoms? I feel so much better. Like, why can't I just wait a day or two to get worked on again versus, so it's very interesting. But building up your system so that you can have these quick changes is really important. But also, the ability for your system to change quickly is a sign of like neuromuscular robustness, right? Like the ability to change quickly, right? We're like, we train our body to be a certain way, whether you're intentionally training it or intentionally not, but it becomes kind of stuck in the default way. Just like Charlie was saying, like the compensation becomes the default. So we have to like change that and show your body, hey, there's options here. There's flexibility here, not in terms of like being flexible, but like there's, many routes to getting, your arm to do that thing or your back to do that thing in a symptom-free way. So really taking the time to build up your system is where a lot of people get really, really happy and excited about the process. I mean, it's always fun as you're like, crossing off symptoms and feeling better and better. But to feel like I have this thing that like when I'm bothered by something, I already know I have MAT and it's going to make a big improvement. And I've already built my system so that it can make a big improvement and very quickly usually. And that's why people, I think, love MAT, is that not only, obviously it has to make sense in their brain and they have to agree with like, hey, my muscles working properly is important. But the fact that it is very impactful, every session is always very impactful for like how you're feeling. But you do have to get your system to that point where you're handling sessions and you're like saying, hey, I've worked through enough of my compensations that now it's really kind of topical stuff.
Exactly. So I want to share a couple of stories. First one is, with myself. I've been fortunate enough to, receive MAT on a very regular basis from Julie here for a number of years now. And she's really helped me, through a lot of things that were going on with my system, with my body overall, before getting MAT. And fortunately, like, we got my body to a point now where it's very much at kind of a maintenance level, of place where like my baseline is feeling really good, is functioning really well. But every once in a while, something does come up. And so 2 Thanksgivings ago, I was playing in a basketball tournament, and I really tweaked my knee. Like I really, really hurt my knee to the point where it was painful to walk. And it happened on a Friday night, and there were more games to play starting Saturday morning. And Julie worked on my knee for about 15 minutes, like no exaggeration, 15 minutes. I got up off the table and it felt like nothing had ever been wrong to begin with. Okay. And so but I was able to, by having MAT consistently done to my system, I was able to get my body to a point where all the other kind of compensations and all the, stuff that was going on with my trunk and my hips and my feet and everything else that could be influencing the knee, those were all kind of taken care of. And so she could just go to the area that had gotten stressed, that was symptomatic, and just kind of knock that out pretty quickly. And it was like literally night and day difference. In fact, we recorded a podcast episode, like the week immediately following that, of like the most impactful experience I've ever had with MAT. And it took her no more than 15 minutes to do that. And that's one of those things where it's like, if it was my first MAT session and that was my first experience, oh my gosh, it would have been like, this is the most incredible thing ever, because like I had like this massive thing happen to my knee and 15 minutes later, it's like it never even happened. And but it was years of getting, of having my body worked on, and getting my body to that place where, those 15 minutes could take care of it completely. So that's been my experience with it. But even on a shorter timeline, I was working with a client earlier today, and I've seen him for, call it like 12 sessions we've worked together. And so, we've been working together for a few months now, and, he's had some back stuff that has been going on, back and, kind of leg stuff that has been going on for, a decade or so. And he's at the point now where, like, if something happens between one session and the next, now he can come in and it's like just one session of tuning that thing up and he's completely good to go. And so for him, it only took, like a few months of consistent exposure to MAT to kind of regulate his nervous system and, improve the function overall of his muscles, so that, he can just come in. It's like, okay, yeah, like something really weird's going on, like with my shoulder into my neck. And it's like, okay, boom, 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 boom. After that one session, it's like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Like, it's not there anymore. I feel amazing. And then, reports the same thing next week. It's not like he came back the next week. It's like, no, like everything's feeling great. And so you can get your body to that place relatively quickly. And once you are there, that's when honestly it can become magical, where it can literally become like, okay, like I can go out, I can push my body really hard. And like, if something comes up, I know that I'm just one session away from feeling amazing again. And to get your body to that place, it's a very empowering place to be, because it gives you a tremendous amount of confidence that you can do what you want. You can do what you want when you want. And if anything does go awry, you're just one session away. You are literally just one session away. But it takes the consistent work up front in order to get yourself there. So if you're interested in starting MAT, or maybe you are, on your own MAT journey right now, and you started because you heard that, like, okay, MAT is this magical thing where you just need the one session, and you are good to go. We want you to understand that, okay, while every once in a while that does happen, it's really just dumb luck when that happens. And for the vast, vast, vast majority of people, it's going to be a multi-session kind of process just to establish some baseline of like higher function within your system. But once you get that baseline established, then all of a sudden you can come in and it's just like that one session and the thing is taken care of. Like Julie talked about with her client with her wrist, like I've experienced with myself, like I was talking about with my client and his back. You can get your body to that place, but you need to establish that baseline first. So if you enter your MAT process with that mentality, or you start kind of adopting that process, that mentality for the MAT process that you're already in, it's going to help you kind of set your expectations much better to give you the favorable outcomes that you're looking for, of not only feeling better, functioning better, strength and mobility improved, tightness decrease, and everything like that. But having this almost like insurance policy of like, if something does go awry, I'm literally just one session away because I've taken the time up front to establish that baseline of neuromuscular function. So if this is something that you are interested in experiencing for yourself, that's exactly what we can help you with at our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, where we specialize in muscle activation techniques. So all you need to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to our website, www.matschaumburg.com. Click the big green button that says Get Started. You can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We always appreciate your eyes on YouTube, your ears on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you consume our content. If you wouldn't mind leaving us a rating and a review, it always means the world to us when you do. We are wishing you a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.